Can't minimize. So hold on. Here we go. All right. So I'm going to talk now about business writing, and a few things I'll say when it comes to business writing that are very important for you guys to know. And this is kind of underlined and critical is business writing is not writing an essay. It's completely different than everything you learned in business one, or excuse me, in English 1A, as far as how your document looks, how you lay it out. Certainly, you still want to have proper grammar. You want to have proper punctuation. You want to have proper sentence structure. All that, of course, doesn't change. That doesn't matter, what context you write in. You always want to be aware of your grammar and your punctuations and typos and all those things. But how it looks is completely different. And the one thing that you'll realize right off the bat when it comes to business writing is that it is not just how it reads, it is also how it looks. And that is very critical when it comes to business writing. And so that's what I want to go over with you. First off is just the do's and don'ts. By the way, this is your homework assignment. So I'm basically going to be doing it for you. And when I do it for you, it'll be valuable to you to follow along and to copy what I do here. But basically, this is the do's and don'ts of business writing. So first, if you notice on my screen, can you see my screen, by the way, everybody? Anybody? Please? Can you see my screen? I can't hear you for some reason.
Yes.
Okay. So 50% how it reads and 50% how it looks. And I like to tell students, you have the opportunity with your business writing to not only stand apart from everybody else, because most people don't know how to do it well. They don't know how to write a memo well. They don't know how to write an email well. They don't know how to format it properly. They definitely don't know how to use what I call elements of design to improve readability and scannability. And you will definitely stand out if you apply what I share with you. And not only that, but you could actually build your brand. What I mean by that is the reputation that you have as a good communicator can very easily be communicated well by how you write. And people will not dread getting an email from you or not cringe when they get a letter from you. They'll be ready to read it because they know that you are somebody whose writing is easy for them to read. And that's really the bottom line of business writing, because people are busy, right? We're very, very busy. We don't have time to read an entire document. In fact, most busy business people don't read the whole thing. They scan it. They just eyeball it really quick and they read through it and they're looking for the highlights that their eyes can grab. And so how it looks is just as important as how it reads. So keep that in mind. When you give me a document, don't just worry that it's written well. That's one half of it. Make sure it looks good. And I'll show you what I mean by looks good through my samples here. So let's just go through the do's and don'ts. So first off, how does it read? Well, first, and very importantly, is that you should have a conversational tone in your business writing. It's not meant to be rude. It's not meant to be harsh or brash. It's also not meant to be too informal, like, hey, and using slang and all that kind of stuff. Be very careful about it. Just simple, plain language that you would use with anybody. Like if you go to the restaurant and you're ordering, keep it simple, clear, plain, that kind of conversational language. It should always be focused on being positive. In other words, you don't use words like can't, won't, fail, failure, loser, things like that. You want to keep it positive. You want to focus on not what you can't do. Sorry, but we can't do that. But rather, what can you do instead in place of that? Yeah, we're unable to do that. However, we can do this. Always trying to slant it positively. That's very important when it comes to business writing, and the tone should be positive. Next one. It should be clear and plain language. Again, everyday language that you would use with anybody. The reason that is we live in a very diverse, multicultural world with many different languages, and the more clear, plain, and simply you speak in your writing, the better your audience is going to understand and be able to understand you and get the message you're trying to get across. So clear, plain language. Don't be flowery. Don't be fancy. Don't use all these big words unless that's relevant to the audience that you're speaking to or writing to. It must be you-centered. Now, you-centered doesn't just mean focusing on and using the word you. It means that you're putting it in terms that is beneficial to the reader. So it's not about what I want from you, it's what you have to provide. You're the one providing this. So rather than me saying, hey, could you send me that, send me that report right away, you could say something like, since you have a copy of it, would you be willing to send me a copy? That kind of thing. You're putting it in terms of the other person and what's going to benefit them, or how valuable they are, not just what I want, I need, I desire. And that's very important when it comes to writing in business settings. Again, be brief and short. One thing that business writing is brief and concise. We call it economical. That's what your book says. It's not long. You don't have to stretch it out. This isn't English 1A. We're not stretching it out to fit 4 pages. You're trying to shrink it down to get to the gist of what you need to say, so that busy business person doesn't have to read a long document. That's really the bottom line. So short, concise, brief, but also not to the point where you're not getting your message across or not fostering goodwill. Sometimes you can come across very abrupt and blunt. You got to be careful of that as well, but finding that nice balance. Change up your sentence type. You also want to be aware that if you have all simple sentences, which, by the way, most of your sentences probably should be simple sentences, which are basically one subject and one predicate, versus one subject plus not a conditional. And I'm trying to think of the word. Anyway, we're going to go over this in our textbook pretty soon here. There's 4 different kinds of sentences that you can use, and they're simple, compound, complex, and complex. And so each one has a little bit different flair to it. And the reason that I bring all of them up is simply because if you make them all simple, which is really the better way to write, it sometimes comes across a little choppy. Sorry, I got a little problem here with my computer. So because of that, you want to kind of mix up your types of sentences so that way they are not all choppy. Oh, I'm trying to plug my power cord in and it's not working. There we go. All right, so then the next thing is, so make sure you use the 4 different sentence types. Make sure you use proper grammar, of course, proper punctuation, that you're not capitalizing words that need to be capitalized, that you are certainly not having any typos. All of that stuff makes it come across very unprofessional. So make sure that you're aware of that. Any kind of improper grammar or poor punctuation definitely does that. Make sure that you use complete sentences, that you don't have sentence fragments, that you don't have run-on sentences. A lot of students love to just keep going on and on and on in a sentence. I think that's the biggest problem I see, is they'll have this 4-line sentence. There's no reason to do that in business writing. In fact, it makes it real clunky and hard to read. So make them shorter, short sentences, 20 words roughly at the most, and make them complete sentences, not run-ons. A lot of students like to add a comma and then add another comma, keep adding on content, and they've pretty much lost the reader. Make sure your sentences are parallel. So in other words, that they're not, like I just mentioned, a comma with another comment and a comma with another comment, and they become run-on sentences. Parallel sentences are, clean and concise. And you're going to see this, by the way, when you do your writing assignment on sentence rewrites. We're going to spend a little bit of time on parallel sentences. So if you're not sure what those are, we'll be going over those at that time. Make sure you have the proper structure. You have an intro, a conclusion, a body, etc. in your writing assignment. And even that's true, even in a short little document, like you're going to write somebody a memo or an email, you still should have an intro, you still should have a body, and you should still have a conclusion. And all of those are very important. We'll go over all that when we get to the chapter. You're going to be looking at the 3x3 writing process. And it's the whole idea of, doing your introduction, doing your body, doing conclusion. And if you spend a little bit of time organizing your email or your memo or your letter that way, it's going to make you come across a lot more professional. Very important. You want to group similar information together in paragraphs. So for instance, I'll show you here in a minute, we have a parking memo assignment. And the parking memo assignment, it's addressing 3 different groups of people. It's addressing day shift employees, swing shift employees, and all employees. And what a lot of students do is Paragraph 1, they're talking to day shift employees, swing shift employees, and all employees. In the next paragraph, they're talking to day shift employees, swing shift employees, and all employees. In the third paragraph, they're talking about all three again. And you're like, why not group together similar information so that everything that you need to say to the day shift employees is in the first paragraph, and then everything you need to say in the swing shift employees in the second paragraph. And that's what I mean by chunking, is you do chunks of information addressing each separate topic or group of people or whatever, and you put the information together that was relevant to that group in a single paragraph. And by the way, chunking is extremely important when it comes to writing for blogging and digital channels and web writing and all the stuff that we're doing a lot of today. So learning how to do chunking is very valuable. And so that's something that you definitely want to do. All right, now we get into the don'ts of how it reads. And that is, don't make it too formal or informal. Another problem with students is they make it very formal. Sounds like you're reading a legal document. No, again, plain, simple, clear language, not flowery, formal, stuffy content, or not too informal. Don't be, or you guys, somebody was writing in their paper, you guys, this, you guys, that, that's just too informal. So make it just plain, everyday conversational language. Be careful of being negative or harsh, saying things like I can't, or you must, and if you don't, and, disciplinary action will follow, like you're looking for a reason to slap those employees or whatever it is. Be careful of that. Make it positive, as I mentioned. Again, not being flowery or impressive. Some people like to write like they're writing an essay, and again, this is not an essay. We're not here to read your descriptive language, your flowery language. We're too busy, right? Just give us the facts, give us the information. That's what business writing is. The flowery stuff, save that for your novel. Me-centered. Very often a document is me-centered. What you're going to do for me, what I need you to do for me, as I mentioned earlier, but the better thing to do is you-centered. How does this benefit you? How are you involved? Why are you important to this? And that's going to make somebody respond a lot easier. Very, very important is don't make it long. Again, it's supposed to be brief. So you shouldn't have these long paragraphs of text and long memos and all this unnecessary stuff. Boil it down. When I took this class in college, my teacher gave us a paragraph of text, and he said, I want you all to whittle this entire thing down to the shortest amount of information where it doesn't lose its message, but yet gets rid of all the clutter. And we were able to edit it down to one sentence. It was probably about 10, 15 sentences. We got it all down to one sentence because it was all clutter. And so you got to be careful that you don't add all this extra stuff that's unnecessary. Avoid long sentences. Again, remember I mentioned to you earlier, comma, more stuff, comma, more stuff, comma. No. End the sentence and start a new one. If your sentence doesn't make sense, you're reading it. This is my rule of thumb. If you have to read it more than once, it doesn't make sense. So you have to change it, reword it, make it 2 sentences, make it 2 simple short sentences. And I'll write that on your document. I'll say, this is clunky. This sentence is clunky. Rewrite it. I'm not going to do the work for you. I'm going to say, rewrite it. It's clunky. Make it 2 sentences. This is a long sentence. Make it 2. It's a run-on sentence, etc. So be careful of that. Your sentences should be around 20 words on average. You do not want to write like you're texting. So you don't want to use shorthand. You don't want to use that kind of stuff. You want to use complete words and complete sentences. Be careful of that. Shorthand stuff is kind of the same thing. Emojis are not always wrong, but in a document they are. So you're okay to use emojis in an email, like if at the end of a message or whatever, but I don't recommend using them in a document like a letter or a memo. Be careful of run-on or incomplete sentences, as I talked about already. Having no structure. So again, just a paragraph with all the information in it. There's no structure. Nothing is pointed out. Nothing is visible. That's really awful. And there's no structure to what you're saying. So sentence 1 is talking about one thing. Sentence 2 is talking about something else. Sentence 3 is talking about the same thing that was talking about in sentence 1. And that kind of stuff has no structure. It's all over the place. It's disorganized. So you want to organize your thoughts into paragraphs. That's the best way to write in a business setting. So that's pretty much it for the list on how it reads. Now we get into how it looks. And this is what we call design elements to make it readable or to make your document scannable. Again, busy business people do not have time to read paragraphs of text, even if they're short paragraphs. It's like, I don't have time. Make it easy for me just to scan the document, at least first, to know whether I want to read it. And to do that, it helps to use these elements that I'm going to be sharing with you. So the first one is and by the way, this is true of all business writing, is you always use single-spaced paragraphs. And remember, when you did an essay, you did double spacing. No double spacing at all in business writing, except for your memo title block. That's it. Everything else is single-spaced. All of your signature blocks, single-spaced. All of your paragraphs, single-spaced. All of your bullet lists, single-spaced. Everything is single-spaced, separated by space. So you have a short paragraph all compact together, then a space, and then another short paragraph all compacted together. That's how the eye sees it better than a big paragraph. And you'll see when I show you some samples here. That's the first thing. Secondly, short paragraphs separated by space. I mentioned that. So single space paragraph, short paragraphs. How long should a paragraph be? No more than 8 lines maximum. That's what your book says. It says as a guideline, but I say maximum, no more than 8 lines. And that would be on a long document. If you're doing a very short document, I wouldn't make them more than 3 or 4 lines each paragraph, and then do another paragraph, do a space and then another paragraph, and then a space and another paragraph. So no long paragraphs. Proper formatting. So make sure your document has the right formatting. Now, we're going to be going over this in a separate video, how a letter should be formatted, how a memo should be formatted, how an email should be formatted. They're all different. They all have different qualities and characteristics about them, and you need to do them properly. And when I assign you an assignment, I say, make this a memo, I expect it to look exactly like a memo looks. If I say an email, I expect it to look exactly like an email looks. And I'll go over that when we get into each of those assignments later. You definitely want to, and that what I mean by proper formatting is margins, title block, signature block, salutation, all the parts of each of those documents. And you'll be learning about that as we go. Your font size on your writing assignments always should be in any business writing assignment should be 10 to 12. You don't want to go 14, that's too big. You don't want to go 9, that's too small. Sweet spot, in my opinion, is 12, but don't go any larger than that unless you're doing like a promotional marketing material. Always use headings if you can. Now, what are headings? Oh, I use them here. The do and the don't is a heading, right? It's a bold, underlined, above, so you know what's in that list, right? You know that in that list is all the do's, and you know in the other list, that's all the don'ts. We'll use those headings in your document. I say use them liberally. Why? Because they make your document scannable. I don't have to read each paragraph. I can just read the heading and know what each paragraph is about. And then I can decide, do I want to dig deeper into that paragraph? If I have no heading, I'm forced to read the paragraph, which I may not want to, and I may not. So use headings. There's nothing wrong with using headings on letters, on memos. I say use them liberally in your documents. Next, use parallel bullet lists and numbered lists. Numbered lists and bullet lists make your document easy to read and to scan. I'll show you an example, but if you have a paragraph of text, there's no way you're even going to see what's in there. But if you make it a list, I can scan the list with my eyes and I can see exactly what you need me to do, especially when you're asking for something like, hey, I need you to do these 5 things. Put it in a list. Here's all 5 of them. Don't just hide it in a paragraph. Make a list. Use bullet lists liberally. Use headings liberally. Very important. Also, use bold, italics, underlines, and all caps within your document. So if you have a paragraph and it's just a boring paragraph of text, add some bold text in there. Make important things stand out, especially dates and numbers and times, all that. That way the eye catches those bold text. Make them underline, make them bold, make them all caps, whatever you need to do to make your reader be able to scan your document and pick out the things that are very important. That's what you want your business writing to look like. You don't want it to just be boring paragraphs of text. You should try and fit your document on 1 page. Most business writing doesn't really need to be longer than 1 page. If it goes into 2 pages, make sure it's at least 2.5 before you go into the next page. If not, edit it down so it fits in 1. Ideally, if you don't want to have a full page and then a sentence on the next page. Get it to fit in 1 in that case. So if it goes 1.5 pages, you can get away with having the second half page. But other than that, fit it on 1 page. Unless you need 40% of the next page, that's what I say. Use graphs, tables for data, things like that, and make your document visually appealing. So there's nothing wrong in business writing to put a graph, to put a picture, to put a heading that's different, large, big, beautiful letterhead, etc. Those are all very valuable, and those make your document visually appealing. So those are the do's. Definitely do all those things. As far as the don'ts, they kind of are in contrast to the do's. So don't double space. Nothing in business writing is double spaced. Nothing except the title block for a memo, and I'll show you that later. Never should your document be one paragraph long. In other words, one large paragraph, and that's it. So you have, greetings, Eric, big paragraph, and then sincerely, Marie. No. No one paragraph, no all one paragraph. Even if your document is 6 lines long, there should be 2 paragraphs. And not only that, it should be separated and use design elements like bullet lists or bold text or whatever to make things stand out. But don't give me a document that's 1 paragraph, as I will mark you way down. Secondly is improper formatting. I don't know what happened here, but again, improper formatting, you don't want to do that. You don't want to have too large or too small of a font. You don't want to not use headings. You don't want to not use bullet lists. You don't want to not using any of those things. Don't do multiple pages on something that could be short. Not making your document visually appealing. Those are all, I think. Do I have any more? No, that's it. Okay. So that's the list of don'ts. Sorry, I rushed through it. So make sure you use headings, you use bullet lists. Don't not use any of those things. You should have something in your document. And you'll see in the rubric that I'll show you in a minute that I'm looking for those readability items in your writing assignment. So that's it for the do's and don'ts of business writing. I'm going to go ahead and close that. And I'm going to go to some sample documents to show you this stuff. So let me see here. I'm going to share my desktop. Are you guys still with me? Are you guys, everybody okay? Sometimes I wonder. All right, hold on just a second. Let me go to here. I'm just going to open a bunch of documents that are in my downloads that I did earlier today. And I'm going to just show you some of these. All right. All right, so these are just, can you guys see my screen now or no? Anybody? What do you see? Anybody? Please.
Dear, due May 10th, 2022. It's like a letter.
Perfect. Okay. So this is actually a memo. It's not formatted properly. It is in the sense that and I'll go over this in a separate video, but this is a memo title block. It missing the word memorandum. That's one thing that I know. I don't know it's a memo. And then this particular one is double spaced, so that's good. However, you should tab over every line after the colon like this on a memo. Actually, I would probably go twice. That would be the proper format for a title block for a memo. And then it's also missing the initials down here of whoever the author was. And then it should also have the word memorandum written across the top. And usually it's a much larger font. And maybe it's, something like that. But anyway, so if you look at this document, they did a couple things right in the sense that they have all employees don't obtain will be ticketed, which I would have made this all bold because that's very important that they don't miss that. But this particular document is based off of an assignment that is a parking memo. And it's the one I was talking about earlier. It's addressed to day shift employees, it's addressed to swing shift employees, and it's addressed to all employees. And they all have different information that they all need to know. But the problem here again is this is all one paragraph. Everything's packed into the one paragraph. They did use a heading, which is nice here, parking stickers registration, but they should have at least bolded these dates. But overall, it's a poor document because it's not really formatted. It's not chunked together. It's not structured well. It's not very readable. I'll show you a better example of this. Actually, probably one of these other ones is better. So I'll just close that one. I won't save it. And that one's actually not any better. It's the same. It's even worse. It's the same assignment. Again, it's, I'm writing to inform everyone of parking guidelines for day shift employees. Everyone must park in A and B. For swing shift employees, workers must park in empty space. Then back down to the next paragraphs for day shift employees there, and then swing shift employees. So they're just basically taking the information, and I'm forced to read the whole thing regardless of when I work. And it has no design elements. There's no bold, there's no headings, there's no anything. And especially in a memo like this, because it's addressing 3 different groups, it would be so easy to put this in a format that's very easy to scan and read. So that one's poor as well. I'm going to delete that. That's a letter, so we'll look at that in a minute. That's also a letter. We'll look at that in a minute. That's also a letter. We'll look at that in a minute. That's also a letter. So hold on, I might have to go. So there's the memo. Okay, so here's one that looks a little better. So notice the difference. You guys can see that. So here we have, it's not bad. It's not perfect, but it's not bad. This particular person has, a nice title block here. And they've got it exactly formatted like a memo should. Bold, these bold and all caps headings are really nice. This is called the signature, or excuse me, the title block of a memo. Then they started out explaining, that there's going to be some changes in their policy. And then they took all the information for day shift employees and put it under a nice little heading for day shift employees. And then they made a list of everything relevant to the day shift employees. And then they did swing shift employees, again, made a nice list. So if I'm a day shift employee and I get this memo, I'm not going to care what the swing shift employees do. I'm looking mostly at me, so I'm going to just, day shift, that's me. What does it say? Oh, I can read the list. So easy. Park in A and B, must be assigned to their space, must not park in the curb, can loan their spaces. Now, if I go back to one of those memos that I just looked at a minute ago, you didn't know any of that information. You had to read the whole thing, right? So it was very non-scannable and non-readable, where this is very much scannable. And it's got bold text. Certain things are highlighted. I know that I'll get a ticket if I don't have a sticker, as it says down here. I'll be ticketed. Oh, I don't want to get ticketed. What's that all about? I didn't even have to really read it. I could just pick and choose out of it, and I get the gist of what it's about, and I can read where I think I need to read. That helps busy business people get their jobs done, right? So that's an example of a much better memo. Here's another one. This one's not bad. Actually, that's the same one. I apologize. I just made it a Word document. Let's look at this one here. Here's one. So this one's not bad. Again, it's formatted as a memo. They've highlighted certain things with all caps, made them stand out. They telling you right here, you'll be ticketed. Oh, what do I mean about a ticket? Okay, I need to register my car. They're going to have employee relations. This should have actually been maybe employee registration instead of relations. They have day shift employees, swing shift employees. So again, now I've just made my document scannable. I can read it. So that's what I mean by grouping or chunking your information together and then putting it under headings and bullet lists to make it more readable and scannable. And that is very valuable to it. So here's another one like this one here. Are you going to get any of that information without having to read the whole thing that I just did by scanning? Not at all. And this one here is, it's not formatted like a memo because it has a signature block where memos do not have a signature block. It's also not single spaced. The paragraphs are actually a little more than single spaced. They're probably 1.25. So in order to make it, and it makes it very hard for your eye to read that. You're kind of like scanning through. You could easily improve this by just making it more readable. So anyway, so that's just an example of those. Let me see. I think I do have real quick another sample just to show you the one that I think is probably the best. So let's see if I can find it though. Anyway, are you guys following me on that when it comes to that? All right, here we go. I'll just show you this here. There's a memo. So this is the one I usually give you as a sample. So here's a memo, same one. Let me shrink it down. This is the parking memo. So how do I shrink it down? I guess I can't. There we go. Let's see, I want to zoom. Jeez. There we go, that's better. All right. So there's again, the same memo that was just in a paragraph now is put in a format that makes it very easy to scan and read. And it's formatted exactly as a memo should be formatted. So, all right, let me just show you real quick, like some letters. So here's a letter, same thing with a letter. This letter is fairly formatted properly. It has what's called the return address. It has the inside address, has a salutation. But again, there's no design elements for readability here. There's nothing they've done. They did short paragraphs. That's great, but they could do a lot here to make it stand out, to make it readable, etc. And that's extremely valuable to a document. So let me do this. I'm probably jumping ahead here, but let me I just want to see if I can find one thing and then I'll end. If I can find it where I put it. There it is. Sorry. All right. So look at this document here. Can you guys see my screen by any chance, or do I need to share again? Darn it. Here we go. All right. Check this out. So how many of you have gotten emails, letters, memos that look like that right there? Probably all of you. Okay. Well, it's not formatted like a memo. It's not formatted like anything. It's just a blob of information. But let's just, I'm just going to spend a minute here making it better. Okay. So first off, a salutation should always end in a colon. So, dear Mr. Goodwin. And then let's just make it a memo. So we'll go to Mr. Goodwin from, oops, should be all caps. I'm going to double tab that over. Eric Doucette. Actually, it should have had date first. So let's just say, what is today? It is February 23rd, 2023. And then subject. Memos always have a subject line. And this one is, what is it? Information about hiring process. I think that's what it's about. By the way, your subject line should always be all what's called title case, like this. So it should every word should be capitalized, and then dear Mr. Goodwin, and then for a memo you don't need a signature block, you just need the initials of the author. So again, we've at least formatted it like a memo. And then can you please provide the information on social media jobs? Provide me more information on how social media jobs can profit the company. We're looking to hire a social media expert. There's not a question, by the way, to monitor our cyberspace activity and respond both positive and negative messages. We'd like to have these questions formally answered. Now, there's a list of questions here in this paragraph, but do you guys even know that? I mean, even if you keep reading, you're like, wow, I can't see those questions. I mean, it's certainly not at all scannable or readable. So especially something like this, a list of questions. So maybe we should, do something like this. Here's some questions we have about the social media position, right? And then I'm just going to do a nice little bullet list. What should we do on the job? How do we determine what is the expected salary? Which department would they report to? Corporate communications is in the department. Where would this position be placed in the company? So in just a few minutes, I made that document 1,000,000 times more readable, right? Just by what I did. So now I might go in there and say, something like, maybe I'll make that bold and underline so that it stands out, right? We would like these questions formally answered. Maybe I'll do something like that so it's aware what I'm looking for. Here are some questions. And then I have all the questions listed. Thank you for your time and questions. I might even add another paragraph here. Oops. To separate it out. That looks pretty good. Maybe do questions in bold so it stands out. There's no dates or times, but if there's any dates, for instance, here's a better way to end this would be if you would be able to get this to us by next Friday, March 5th, that would be excellent. So now I might want to take March 5th and highlight that. Any dates or times would be perfect to highlight. So I just took a document and I made it 100 times more readable than what it was. So that's what I'm talking about. And you do that on all of your business documents and you will get good scores and grades from me. So, all right, that's all I was going to say. I'm going to stop recording.